The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Thursday, October 31st, the last month in October. This year is about to wind it down, entering the last 2 months of the year, and I will be on the road for most of the next 2 months. I think for like 5 weeks of the next 9 weeks, I will be on the road. So we'll have to figure out programming and when I'm doing shows and all of that. But please bear with me as I travel the globe. I think I'm hitting 5 continents over the next 6 weeks. No, it should be 5 continents over the next 5 weeks. That's better. That sounds a lot better. And I think that's true. All right, we're going to talk Trump today. And I have a few comments about this before we get started. So one, this is my show. When I speak on my show, I do not represent anybody else. I do not represent ARI, the Ayn Rand Institute. I'm its chairman of the board, but when I speak on the Yaron Brook Show, this is me. ARI does not endorse everything that I say. And indeed, ARI is a 501c3. It is a non-for-profit. It cannot take political positions. As you know, I take political positions on this show as me, not as the chairman of ARI. So anything I say here should, you don't like, offends you, that's me that you don't like, that's me offending you, don't attribute it to ARI. And the same is true of Ayn Rand. I do not speak for Ayn Rand. I do not know what Ayn Rand's views would be on this election. I have my suspicions. I like to think that what I say is broadly consistent with Ayn Rand, although I think her reasoning and certainly her way of her articulation would be very different and a lot better than mine, and she would be a lot deeper and a lot more philosophical. That's just the reality. I am not her. So I want to make that clear. I don't speak for anybody else. I also want to make clear why I'm doing this show, because a lot of you might say, Yaron, you talk about Donald Trump all the time, and I have. I mean, since 2015 when he announced he was running, I have spent hundreds, maybe thousands, I don't know, of hours speaking about Donald Trump. I don't think it's a mystery, what I think about him. And I have to say, very little has changed, other than I am even more horrified by Donald Trump today than I was, let's say, before January 6th. Even though I despised and thought he was an awful human being and an awful president even before that. So, my fundamental, essential assessment of Donald Trump has not changed over the last 9 years that I've been talking about it. So why do another show? You talk about him all the time. And some of you might be sick of me talking about him, and I completely understand it. I am certainly sick of talking about him. One of the, anyway. So why another show? The reason is because there's an election, and it's in a few days. And the reason is that a lot of people think that, it's my critique of Trump is all over the place. It's scattered. They had a hard time finding it. They can't remember exactly what I say. A lot of people would like, and have written to me, they like one condensed. And I've done this over the years. I've done shows on Donald Trump over the years, but it needs an update. So this is it. I thought I would do it tomorrow, but tomorrow I've got other time constraints. I won't be able to dedicate a full show to it. I thought I would do it on Saturday, but I committed to doing an inflation show on Saturday, and I thought about moving that to another date because David's here. I can say this, but then I look for other dates, and there just isn't another. So I'm committed to doing that on Saturday. And then I thought maybe Sunday, but Sunday I'm doing a show in Hebrew, And then doing this right after that would be depressing. And then Monday I'm interviewing, really fascinating. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm interviewing Mike Mazza from the Institute, a fellow at the Ayn Rand Institute, on private space exploration. Both what's going on, what's happened, Elon Musk, SpaceX, but others, but also the potential for the future and what we see. He's devoted a lot of time to that. We'll also talk about other topics, but that will be one of the topics we will talk about. So that's going to be fun, and that's Monday. So, and then Tuesday's the election. It's too late, and I'm on the road. So today was the day, and so we're going to get through this. I am not responding to anybody. I'm not responding to anybody's endorsements, anybody's analysis. That is not the purpose of this. I was planning to do a Donald Trump show anyway before the election. So this is it. I don't have any plans to go over anything. Now, if you guys have a particular point that you feel I've missed, I haven't talked about, I haven't addressed, then please jump in and address it and ask me. So I'm going to try to cover a lot today. God, I've got a long list. I don't know how much of it I'll get through, and I don't know how in depth I'll get into every point. But feel free to ask me about other topics. Now, you can make this about, some of you will, about Trump derangement syndrome. I've got TDS. I'm deranged around Trump. And that's fine. You have every right to do that. But I think if you're going to be honest, then tell me where I'm wrong. That is, I'm eager. I'm excited. I'm thrilled. If anybody can show me on a particular issue, concrete or abstract, where I am wrong about Donald Trump. That is, make a rational argument. And we can have a rational discussion. But the very notion of you're criticizing Donald Trump, therefore you must have, and you see only negatives in Donald Trump, and, you know, I've got a few positive points, but basically I see almost all negatives about him. Well, maybe he's just a really, really negative person. And if he's not, and if you have an argument that he's not, then bring it to the table. Show me the stuff, right? You think his economy, when he was president, was the best ever, and you can show a direct correlation with him, then give me the data. Show me the graph. If you think he was the best, amazing foreign policy guy, then give me the data. Show me. Give me an example that I have not addressed. But I'm happy to be argued with. I'm happy to be disagreed with. I'm happy to engage. What I think is pathetic is for those of you who are so close-minded, who are not interested in the facts, not interested in reality, not interested in anything like that, to just say, oh, well, he's got TDS. To hell with that. That's pathetic. That's pathetic. All right, so let's start with my objections to Donald Trump. And I'm going to start with his fundamental character. And I, for one, think character is unbelievably important in a president. It is what will determine ultimately what he does, particularly in times of emergency, how he governs, how he relates to the American people, but also to the American system of government. And now, granted, when was the last time we had a president with good character? Maybe, arguably, to some extent, Ronald Reagan. Other than that, I don't know. But there are levels of bad. Clinton was bad. Clinton was a liar, a deceiver, somebody who did stuff behind everybody's back. He was a kind of a scummy human being. his affair with Monica Lewinsky is just an example of that scumminess. And indeed, at the time, Republicans were very good at criticizing Bill Clinton on the issue of character. And the phrase was, character matters. And I agree with him. Character does matter. I never liked George Bush, and the more he was president, the more he declined in my view. And part of that is character. Part of that is just he wasn't that smart, and part of that he had really bad ideas. Obama was awful. Obama was a manipulator, a arrogant, snotty, somebody who looked down, I think, on other people, and who had this, real perception of he's a philosopher king, had no appreciation for America, and he had bad character. He was not I don't think Obama is a good person. But when I look at all those presidents, Trump is by far worse than all of them. He lies more and more consistently. But it's not really the quantities of lying or the kind of lies or the consistency of them. What really is unique about Trump, and this is unique, I think, among all presidents, is that most people lie. They know they're lying. They feel a little embarrassed by it. They care about the truth in some way. Trump just doesn't care. He just does not care. Reality for Trump is completely malleable. He once said, he was confronted by a reporter who said to him, "But that's a lie." And he said, "Yeah, but did it work?" In other words, he has internalized into his character and into his very being the philosophy. He's no philosopher, he's no intellectual, but the philosophy and the sense of life of a pragmatist. He does not care if it's a lie, if it's deceiving, if it's lying, stealing, cheating, manipulating. He doesn't care. What he cares about is, did it work? Did it achieve my short-term aim? And one of the stories, and he's kind of proud of it. He's not ashamed of his lying and cheating and stealing and deception and things like that. A friend of mine who had a job interview with Donald Trump in the Trump Towers, tells the story, and I'm not going to give all the details, but tells the story of this interview, and at some point Trump basically said, "I did business with somebody in your profession, and I did this and this and this. Basically, I cheated him, and I got away with it. Isn't that cool?" And my friend was like, "I don't care what position he offers me, I would never work for this guy. Never work for this guy." And that's who Trump is. He is a lying, cheating manipulator. And he'll manipulate the system to achieve his short-term goal no matter what. Now, I'm interested if the supporters of Trump would like to counter that. Is that not true? Is he not a liar? Does he not relish cheating and getting away with it? So he is the most pragmatic to remind you, pragmatism as a philosophy is the ideology, is the idea that principles don't matter. There are no principles. Only matter is consequences. And not long-term consequences, because one cannot project the long-term, because principles don't matter, and there are no principles that guide long-term. So you can't project the long-term. So tell with the long-term. Tell with principles. All that matters is short-term success for whatever desire you might have. And in that sense, Trump is a complete pragmatist who's internalized it. And he is one of the most dishonest people you will ever meet or you will ever see in public or you will ever encounter. Remember, this is a guy, again, this is personal stuff, but cheated on his wife while she was pregnant, who knows how many times and with whom, and with porn stars and who knows whom else. This is a guy who, is admitted to grabbing women in all kinds of ways. I mean, the vulgarity and the ability of many of you on the chat to just ignore it, to pretend it didn't happen, to pretend it doesn't exist, is truly astounding and should require some introspection about why it is that you are willing to ignore things about Trump that you wouldn't ignore in a business partner. Would you want to go into business with Trump? Is a good question. And the answer is almost always no. I think. Crotch grabbing matters. I do not want to have anything to do with people, adults, who do that. That is disgusting, despicable behavior and should be condemned by any adult. And he's proud of it. He's proud of it. I mean, he will turn on you in an instant if he thinks that serves his interest. And you can see this with the many people he appointed in his first term and then turned on them as the most horrible, awful, evil people possible. You saw it recently with Project 2025. I mean, Project 2025 was clearly started by former Trump people affiliated with the Trump campaign, affiliated with Trump himself. They spent a huge amount of resources and effort and energy in putting an agenda program together, a policy program, a thick, big policy program together for a Trump presidency. They got the best so-called best minds in MAGA, conservative, and put it all together. Oh, with the complete knowledge of Trump. As soon as Trump realized that this was not helping him, that this was hurting him, he immediately stabbed him in the back, demanded the resignation of the lead guy, and claimed he never knew about it. Nothing. It didn't exist. The whole thing didn't exist. No relationship to him. And Project 2025 was a big mixture of really, really bad stuff and really, really good stuff. Just dumped it all, ignored it all, threw all of it away. Now, by the way, because I see it on the chat, I'm not talking about Kamala Harris here. I'm not telling you how to vote. I don't care how you vote. That's your business. You figure it out. I'm telling you why I would never vote for Trump. Haven't and will never. And if I could vote in this election, which I can't because I'm in a Puerto Rican residency, I would not vote for Trump. I'm not making an argument for Kamala Harris. I'm not making an argument for anybody. I'm making an argument against Trump. How you assess that, how you build that, how you integrate that, you're listening. If you don't need that, if you've already made up your mind and you don't need this, you're free to, I release you. You can go. So I cannot think of a president with a lower, and I don't know all the presidents, maybe there was somebody in the 19th century, character than Trump. Trump is a narcissist. That is his orientation about how he's seen. In that sense, he's a complete second-hander and a man of very low self-esteem. He is vulgar. And you could see the low self-esteem and the vulgarity and the narcissism. You could see that in the debates this year. This time we didn't have debates, which is a shame that he didn't participate because we would have seen him on stage. But you saw that in the debates in 2016 when he went after, was it Carly Fiorina for being ugly, and he went after Ted Cruz's dad for cooperating with Castro or something, where he just made stuff up and just was horrible about it. he has the character of a mob boss, of a scummy mob boss who will turn on anybody and wants to be somehow loved. That's the narcissism. And oh yeah, the first controversy when Donald Trump got elected president in 2016. Do you guys remember this? Some of you are too young to remember. The first controversy was around how many people attended his inauguration. Was it bigger than Obama's? Was it the biggest and greatest inauguration ever? His obsession with how big he is, the crowd size, says a lot about how small his personality is, his self-esteem is, his character is. And his obsession with trivialities constantly around these things, how he's perceived, how he's looked, constantly his, going after the media for criticizing him. They criticize every president. Maybe they criticized him more, but he was like obsessed by it, constantly commenting on it. A real narcissist, a real pragmatist, and with all the character and vices that go along with that. I think that in and of itself should disqualify somebody from being president. You never know what he's going to do. He is completely unpredictable. And that could play out in positive ways, but it really could play out in negative ways. Really play out in negative ways. And it could play out in negative ways that could be fundamentally, overwhelmingly destructive for this country and for all of us. He has said, and people have characterized him, I don't have any firsthand experience with this, that his loyalty is, or what he values, I think Kelly said this, and others have said this, what he values is personal loyalty. Personal loyalty, not ideas, not truth, not the American system of government, not the Constitution, not consistency with the Constitution. Are you loyal to him? All that matters. All he cares about. Again, that's typical of a narcissist. Now take this person with this, what I would consider very, very, very low character, and put it at the head of the American system. Now, the American system is a very robust system, the American political system. It is a political system that can withstand a lot of challenges. I mean, the founders were men of genius. The founders were men of genius. And one second, and they created a system that is very robust, very strong, can withstand a lot of things. And it can withstand a bad president, and it has withstood many of it. And it withstood 4 years of Trump. It even withstood Trump's attempt to override many of the safeguards of the American system on January 6th. And it would probably withstand another 4 years of Trump, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. The American system is what makes whatever good is in America today still function. Separation of powers, the fact that we have many of our rights protected in the Bill of Rights and in the Constitution, the fact that we don't have a executive branch that is all powerful, although that is changing over time and it's becoming more and more powerful, much more powerful now than the founders envisioned. it to be and much more powerful now than it was 20 years ago, 40 years ago, 100 years ago. We now have a very robust, very, very powerful executive branch, which is very, very different than how the founders imagined our system of government. And it's also a system of government that is grounded on a philosophical foundation that doesn't exist anymore to a large extent. It was grounded on the ideas of enlightenment. It was grounded on a philosophy of the Enlightenment. And you can see that in the Declaration of Independence and in the whole structure and purpose and meaning and of the Constitution and the Federalist paper discussions and debates around it. And in that sense, the American system of government, while being robust in its structure, is weak. It's weak because the philosophy that set it up is mostly gone. The number of people who understand why it exists and how it's supposed to function is small. The number of people who would be willing to go out into the streets to defend it is minimal. And it's being attacked by left and right daily. And what keeps it together is a structure that's still kind of respected for tradition's sake, and which the court still abides by and doesn't want to challenge for a variety of reasons. And the Supreme Court sticks to it. And we've got a decent Supreme Court with all the problems that it has. It's a decent Supreme Court. Well, again, maybe one of the few, maybe call them good things that Trump did. We'll see. We'll get to that. Although I don't know how we're going to get to all the issues I want to bring up. So we will see how far we get. And I see we've got a lot of super chats. A lot of super chats. Yes. And I've still got a lot more to say. But Donald Trump has shown in his words and his actions a disrespect for the Constitution that, again, as far as I know, and I'm not an historian, no other president has shown. All right, let me stop here for a second. Let me just make a request. Please don't ask me questions about the Leonard Peikoff interviews. I really don't want to comment on them. If you want me to make I'll say what I have to say about Leonard, but I really don't want to comment on this. I don't want to read like you're not your average algorithm. I don't want to read that question. So just don't ask, certainly not questions like that. Don't ask them. I don't want any disrespect shown towards Leonard, towards Peikoff, any disrespect towards Peikoff on my channel, right? He is somebody who is my mentor, my teacher, a very, very close friend for many, many years. He's somebody I love and respect and admire. I don't agree with him, but I don't want disrespect shown. So please stop it. Right? Don't do it. Right? You don't like something he said, you don't like this or that. Plenty of other channels from which to express that. Not on my shows. Ask me anything you want about Trump. Ask me anything you want about Kamala Harris. Ask me anything. Just I'm not commenting here on Leonard Peikoff. Again, he is a hero for me, and I have no intention of saying anything negative about him. As you can tell from the content, I disagree. That's all I'm willing to say. Right? That's all I'm willing to say. So for Trump, an American system, the stuff he said about the courts and about other things is scary. I don't believe Donald Trump, and here, I don't have inside information, so you could challenge me on this, but I do not believe Donald Trump has any understanding of the American system of government. I do not believe he's read the Constitution. I do not believe he understands the Declaration or the Constitution. I don't think he cares. I don't think he cares. He wants to be president, and he was president, and as president, he's the boss. That's what he cares about. That's what he finds interesting. That's what drives him. He has no understanding or, again, sympathy for or cares about the Constitution. And he's said so in so many words. He has basically said, that he wishes the presidency should have more power. He wants to have much more power. He has expressed the desire to have the kind of power that a Xi or a dictator in North Korea or Putin has. He would like to have the kind of respect from his people that they have. If you believe Kelly, he would like his generals to be, yes, sir, we will do whatever you say. And I do believe Kelly. I don't think Kelly has any kind of incentive to lie about these things. And of course, whatever he said has been confirmed by others. And somebody like John Bolton, who I know and have a lot of respect for, has said this even before Kelly said. He wants yes men. He wants everybody to say just yes to what he says. That's his narcissism. That's at the core. That's his lack of self-esteem. He doesn't want disagreement. At the end of the day, if he comes to a decision, he might want disagreement between the people who are his staff. But then once he comes to the decision, there's no more discussion. Again, he would like the Supreme Court to do what he wants. He would like Congress to do what he wants. And then, of course, there's January 6th and the lead up to January 6th. Donald Trump lost the election in 2020. He lost it by a very small margin, just a few, 14,000 votes or whatever it happens to be in Georgia and Pennsylvania. I mean, he lost it. And there's no question that because of COVID, rules about the elections changed and everything. But he could have encouraged his voters to vote by mail. He could have encouraged his voters to do early voting, as he is this election. And he didn't. Maybe a strategically political bad decision. But he lost that election. And everybody, literally everybody around him, knew that he lost his election. And literally everybody around him, with the exception of a handful of people who would not say anything to contradict Trump, told him he lost the election. And he persisted that he did not. He persisted in the lie. He persisted in that lie to this day, knowing it's false. But that's pragmatism. It worked. It worked. It convinced 40-something% of Republicans to continue to support him no matter what, because ultimately he won in 2020 and it was stolen from him. It worked. It worked in getting him back to be the nominee of the Republican Party in 2024, and it might work to get him to be president in a few days. And then on January 6th, he encourages people to go down to the Congress. He didn't tell them to break in, but God, I mean, given everything that was going on the days before, given the lead up, given the threats, given everything, did he not know? I mean, you have to ask, why wasn't there more security and all of that? Didn't everybody know? They knew. Part of it's incompetence. Part of it's, I don't know, wanting it to happen. I mean, as commander-in-chief, as president of the United States, Congress is rioters. Break into Congress. I mean, don't tell me they just walked in. They broke windows. They climbed up walls. They beat up cops. They broke barricades. They tried to get into the chamber by force as police were holding back the doors. Didn't stop them. They did not listen to the police when they were told to leave. I mean, if this was a group of leftist BLM people doing exactly the same thing, exactly the same acts, you guys would be up in arms. You'd be horrified. You'd be so upset. But it's supporters of Donald Trump, so, you know, they must have a good cause. They're the good guys. They're on the right side. So we're not going to be upset. I mean, January 6th will go down as one of the dark days in American history. And on that day, I truly believed, and I said this, I think, at the time because I did a live show, that was it. Donald Trump was finished. His political career was over. And a lot of Republicans said that. A lot of senators said that. A lot of the kind of people that are now groveling at his feet said that. And I don't know how he made the comeback. I don't know how people change their minds. I don't know how people are willing to tolerate what happened on January 6th. This was an attack on the very system of America. The fact that has been verified and confirmed and has not been denied by Trump, that he urged Pence to do something that is clearly, unequivocally, obviously unconstitutional. And that Pence refused, and Trump called him a traitor. The fact that while these people were rampaging through the Capitol, and, you know, again, did your eyes deceive you? Did you not see this on video? The fact that he stood by, that he just stood there with his phone, tweeting and doing nothing, that he didn't call in the National Guard, that he didn't increase police, that he didn't urge them to go home. And when he did, it was so weak. Again, just that one event, just that incompetence on that day should disqualify him. Should disqualify him from being president. I don't care who the opposition is. Somebody who denies that he lost and then allows for Congress, for the Capitol to be overrun by thugs in his name and does nothing to stop it? And you could say January 6th is total BS, but that's because you're rewriting history and you're pretending you didn't see what you saw and you're pretending the facts are not facts. I'm addressing somebody in the chat. And that's fine. You can do that. But it's not. The evidence is everywhere for what actually happened. The fact that Pence is in danger, literally in danger, that the crowd is calling to hang him, and people are trying to chase him down and find him, and that the President of the United States says about it, his vice president being in danger. So what? Again, well documented. So what? Again, disqualifies you as being president. That's it. And again, you can... So, really bad character. A disrespect, a disregard for the American system, and an exhibited willingness, again, unique among all presidents in history, an exhibited willingness to overturn this system, to undermine it, to reject the outcome, and to reject basically the Constitution or the legal order, to reject the rule of law. Unique among American history, I think. I'm sure there are other examples. And and again, I think January 6th, Pence, his statements about the Constitution, dictator for a day, even if it's a joke, are enough to disqualify him, not even to mention everything we've said about his character. All right, where do we want to go from here? Now, some people have said, look, Yaron, but this time, he has put together a dream team. Superheroes on the side of I don't know what. He's got J.D. Vance. He's got RFK. He's got Tulsi Gabbard. And he's got Elon Musk. Isn't this a slam dunk? The dream team. Really? I mean, with the exception of Elon Musk, who is a wild card, J.D. Vance is, I've said this for years now, so this is not me shifting because he's vice president. I've said this for years, is one of the most dangerous politicians in America today. He is a Christian nationalist. He has declared himself so. I've shown you video. He is a statist of the worst kind. He is the kind of person that is both smart and articulate and able, who might be able to pull off the final, chapter of American freedom. He is an admirer of people like Orban in Hungary, awful authoritarians. He is an admirer of a local authoritarian in the Democratic Party. J.D. Vance is an admirer of Lena Khan, one of the most evil, despicable women that I know, who would do everything to destroy big business. Yeah. J.D. Vance loves the Democratic head of the FTC. He thinks antitrust is underutilized, should be utilized a lot more aggressively. I think he is an ideologue. His ideology has changed. He's an opportunist in attaching himself to Trump. That's just an opportunity. He, of course, hated Trump. But he is an ideologue. His ideology has evolved and developed. It's changed. He has converted to Catholicism in a very focused, purposeful way. And that Catholicism and the whole integralist ideology in applying Catholicism to government is something he has embraced fully. He has surrounded himself, his intellectual inspirations are real intellectuals in the integralist world, some of the most dangerous people in America today. He is a budding authoritarian. Trump is a bumbling authoritarian. Trump is not smart enough to pull it off. Vance is. So J.D. Vance is just one of the most, I said this from the day he was elected. I said this when he ran a senator for Ohio. I've called him on this from day one. Him and name escapes my mind, the senator from Kansas. RFK. Science denier. Hater of pharmaceutical companies. Pharmaceutical companies that keep a lot of us alive. A lot of us. A lot of people I value and a lot of people you value would not be alive if not for the pharmaceutical companies. Yes, thank you. Josh Hawley from Missouri, not Kansas. I keep blaming Kansas for Josh Hawley. I apologize to everybody who lives in Kansas, who listens to the show. I don't know how many of you there are. Holly is not from Kansas. He's from Missouri. Holly is the worst. Only person close to Holly is J.D. Vance. They are, in many ways, twins. And yet, RFK, who has claims to being promised to be healthcare czar and have an impact on the entire healthcare system, influence on the entire healthcare system by Donald Trump. What does Donald Trump care, after all? He doesn't care. Now, maybe somebody around Trump will stop him from doing this, so it's likely that RFK will not get to become the healthcare czar. But Trump has said he will be. RFK, who is an environmental lawyer of the left, of the far left in many cases, of the woke. Well, he's not woke. So of the left. This is who is part of a dream team? This is a good guy? This is who you want standing by the side of the President of the United States next time there's a pandemic or next time there's some other disaster on the healthcare front? Really? A vaccine denier? A guy who lies about statistics around vaccines? He's a Looney Tune. The guy's nuts. The guy's nuts. Not to mention all the various conspiracy theories that this guy advocates for. I don't get it. But people love him. Tulsi Gabbard. Now, I don't know that much about Tulsi. But all I know about Tulsi is she's another Looney Tune. Anti-war, but what was? A Democrat. A Democrat. A leftist. Now, not a woke leftist. Still a leftist. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard or Kamala Harris? What's the difference? You guys are naive if you think RFK just doesn't want forced vaccines. First of all, can school mandate vaccines? They should be able to. They have other kids to worry about. Also, given the government's heavily involvement in pharmaceuticals, and the government is heavily involved, RFK could have say, in what kind of drugs to focus on, to give money to, where the research money should go. There would be no fast tracking of a COVID vaccine. There would be no fast tracking of any vaccine. But what about other drugs? Is RFK the right guy to be able to supervise what medical research is appropriate and what medical research is not? He's a loon. And you want to put him? I mean, I would love to separate healthcare from government. Love to privatize the NHS. Love to get pharmaceuticals completely out of government. But they're not. And Trump is not going to do that. And RFK doesn't believe in doing that. So he's going to manage gazillions and gazillions of dollars in terms of how they're allocated for research and how they're allocated for healthcare. And, where's he going to allocate them? To the healing properties of crystals? Now, maybe that's not fair for RFK, but we just saw, what's his name, the British podcaster, walk around with crystals that are protecting him from the bad Wi-Fi signals and cellular signals that RFK has taught us all are killing our brains. Really? This is the guy? And then finally, Elon Musk. I love Elon when I'm not hating him. Elon is one of the great businessmen of the 21st century. There's no question about that. I love his spirit. I love his purpose. I love his long-term thinking. But Elon has very little understanding of the way our government works. He has very little understanding of the role of government. You've never heard Musk talk about individual rights. And he talks a good game, and then he doesn't really follow up. See Brazil and Twitter. Musk going in there and making the government more efficient. I've talked about this on other shows. More efficient? Really? In violating our rights? In what ways? Musk says I could cut $2 billion. Sorry, 2 billion, trillion, whatever, some large number. Can he do that without Congress? What departments exactly is he going to shut down? Can he actually cut government spending without, see, this is without cutting Social Security and Medicare? Programs that Donald Trump has said are off the table, can't be touched. So he's just, at best, he's naive. At worst, who knows? He's bought into the J.D. Vance view of government. We just need our side to win so that we can control. I don't know. But that ain't no dream team. Indeed, you could argue, somebody says, and you think Harris will do better. You guys are not listening. I'm not interested in Harris. I'm talking about Trump. I mean, I'm fine with you saying at the end of this program, saying, yeah, Yaron, I agree with you. But Harris is worse, and I'm going to vote for Harris. I mean, that's okay. I get that. I'm interested in seeing those of you who disagree with my analysis of Trump. Now, you could argue that Trump's first candidacy, 2016, he really did have a dream team. He had an amazing group of people working for him. Steve Mnuchin, a Treasury Secretary, is not bad. Not great, not bad. Wilbur Ross, kind of, Department of Commerce, kind of encourage trade. Linda McCone at Small Business Administration. You had Putzler, I forget how to pronounce his name. The governor of Texas, the former governor of Texas, running energy. You had Mathis, Bolton, McMaster, Kelly as generals. I mean, he had a really good team in 2016. Rex Tillerson, thank you, Rex Tillerson. As, what did Rex Tillerson say? Within a few months of being Secretary of State, I think he said that, Donald Trump was a moron. Should have listened to Rex Tillerson back then. Rex Tillerson, the CEO of, a very successful CEO of Exxon, I think it was. You could argue Donald Trump had a dream team in 2016. And the result was, okay. Wasn't great. Wasn't particularly good. Wasn't particularly good. We'll get to his record in the economy and everything else. Maybe, although we're already getting on an hour. Yeah, somebody says all these people were undermining Trump. Yeah, that's right. They were actually standing up to him. So he couldn't do some of the foolish, ridiculous, absurd things that he wanted to do. He's not going to have those people anymore. There will be no adults in the room anymore. The adults in the room are not there. All he's going to have are yes men. Now that is unbelievably scary. This time around, in a second Trump administration, we won't have people saying, hey, President, you can't actually do that. The Constitution doesn't allow you to do that. Or saying, what you're doing might cause a World War III. Maybe you should back off of that. No, none of that will happen. It's Trump and all his yes men, all his accolades, all the people who just say, yes, sir, yes, sir. Because that's the only people he'll appoint. He's had time to prep, to plan, to figure out who's who. And he's going to make sure that none of those people who might say no to him will be part of the administration. Just that should scare you. All right. Let's do I don't know how to do this. Let's do because I don't know, I've got like 30, 40, 50 super chats, and I I want to get to all of them, although I won't read all of them because I told you there's a criteria by which I won't read your super chats. But let's do a marathon quick, hitting all the key policy issues that are out there and that are going to require the President of the United States to deal with, and comment on how President Trump dealt with them in the past. Somebody says, not a dream team without you, Yaron. Nobody's going to have me on their dream team, so don't worry. No politician will ever take me onto their team. Too disruptive, too principled. All right, on foreign policy, let's just go down the list. A lot of foreign policy challenges right now in the world. Let's start with China. China has been defined clearly as the #1 foreign policy challenge of the United States. It is a rising power. It is investing massively in its military. Right now, China is engaged in maybe the largest military buildup in history. Maybe, I'm not sure this is true, but it's possible that China is doing more than the US did during World War II. And China is not at war. What do you do about China? Now here, let me say a few things. First, other than talk a lot about China, Trump did not do much in his first term. Tariffs, which didn't slow China down at all, hurt us more than them, didn't affect anything. Nothing more than that, really. He expressed his admiration for Xi on a number of occasions. I'm sure that slowed China down. There was some buildup of our military, but no real concerted focus on what constitutes the Chinese challenge in the Pacific Ocean. No rethinking of, okay, is China an enemy? And if China's an enemy, what do we do about that? How do we restructure our relationship with China to reflect the fact that China's an enemy? None of that happened during the first term. Talk, and tariffs, which again have no military, strategic, or economic consequences on China. And they were minimal tariffs. Not minimal, they were narrow tariffs on steel, on this, on that. Some of them you could imagine, being a strategic asset, steel, but also done wrongly. And others not so much. And we'll get to tariffs in a minute, but the tariffs weren't just on China. They were on Brazil, and on Canada, and on Mexico, and on Europe. And here I'm going to say something controversial to you guys, as if I haven't so far. Biden has been tougher on China than Trump ever was. If you like tariffs on China, I don't think it's an effective tool, foreign policy tool, but if you like tariffs on China, then Biden has kept all the Trump tariffs and increased a bunch of others. Tariffs on solar panels, tariffs on batteries, dramatically increased the tariffs on China Biden has. But Biden's taking it one step further, which is more effective. He has actually banned the export of sensitive technologies to China, which Donald Trump did not do. Donald Trump did one other good thing about China. He sanctioned Huawei, the Chinese telecommunication company. That turned out, the more I've researched it, to be a good thing. Huawei was clearly spying on behalf of the Chinese, and Trump disengaged with them. That was a good thing. But it's Biden who stopped China from getting the most advanced chips. It's Biden that has gone to the Japanese and the Netherlands and negotiated a deal with them to prevent China from getting the most advanced, chip building technologies. And today the Netherlands and Japan both have, in a sense, embargoes on China for the most advanced, sophisticated chip-making tools. That makes a difference. That I'm actually all for. Take the things that are truly strategic. Take the things that are truly important and don't export them to China. And then, if you decide China is an enemy, and if you decide that trading with China is making China richer, and therefore we should stop trading with China, then embargo the ass out of them. Find ways to do that effectively. Tariffs is not it. It doesn't work that way. It's just a tax on Americans. China is still dominates so many industries. It's not a good foreign policy tool. There are other tools that are far better. So with regard to China, I don't think Trump was particularly effective the first term. I don't think he really has a strategy for a second term. I also fear that Trump is likely to push us into an actual military confrontation with China, which I suspect is probably unnecessary, that we could probably avoid. Better for us, better for everybody, better for the world. China's a nuclear power. We do not want war with China. But I think Trump is quite capable of getting us into a situation where we have no option but to go to war with China, and that would be an unmitigated disaster for civilization. Russia. Russia is now aligned with China, North Korea, and Iran against the United States. And that Trump refuses to condemn anything Putin does, refuses to criticize Putin. When he was president, basically, you could see when they met how much Trump admired Putin, respected Putin. America under Trump is much weaker vis-a-vis Russia. And of course, the constant declarations from Trump and J.D. Vance about not supporting the Ukrainians and cutting a deal strengthens Putin. And if you strengthen Putin, you're strengthening China, you're strengthening Iran, you're strengthening North Korea. I mean, Trump's relationship with Putin is an unmitigated disaster when it comes to foreign policy. He literally is a fanboy of one of the worst authoritarians in the world today. God. And then we come to North Korea. I mean, I think in objectivism, it's been well understood that you don't negotiate with evil. You've got nothing to gain from negotiating with evil. There's no meeting with evil and shaking their hands and kissing you on both cheeks and playing negotiating games with evil, writing love letters to evil. I mean, Ayn Rand was very clear about that in her views of foreign policy. One might strategically make a deal with an evil regime in order to fight something more evil, like her views about opening up to China. But she condemned Nixon for going to China and meeting with Mao, as she should have. Trump's behavior towards the brutal, horrific, murderous dictator of North Korea is just unforgivable. It showed America to be weak, fickle. It showed the American president to be pretty pathetic, willing to jump on a plane, go meet him anyway, and call him his best friend, write love letters to him. North Korea now, part of a clear axis of evil, always been a part of a clear axis of evil. But now supplying troops to the Russians, Not sure the Chinese really like this, but they're supplying troops to the Russians. Shells, military shells, whatever technology they might have, and making noises about war with South Korea. Trump's going to put on another charm campaign? Is that our foreign policy now? The way we deal with threats is we charm them. We tell them how wonderful we think they are. We behave nicely to them. We buy them flowers. We write them love letters. Is that our new foreign policy? But that's what Trump's going to do, right? He's going to go meet with Putin. He's going to go meet with the brutal dictator of North Korea. And he's going to woo them. He's going to charm them. He's whatever, right? That's American strength. America was strong under Trump. No, it wasn't. I don't think any of these guys is worried about Donald Trump. Quite the opposite. I think both Russia and North Korea are eager for Donald Trump to come back to the White House. All right, this is an old one, but I want to remind you, I'll just remind you quickly, I just read a story about the Taliban now in charge of Afghanistan. Women are not allowed to speak to other women. That's the latest thing, right? I mean, this is just a barbaric, horrific regime, evil, and one that has the blood of many Americans on their hands. It was Trump, who invited the Taliban to Camp David. It was canceled in the end, but it was Trump who signed a peace treaty with the Taliban. Yes, it was Biden who pathetically withdrew from Afghanistan, something Trump said he was going to do and committed to doing and wanted to do. But it was Trump that signed a peace deal with the Taliban. Again, Trump is not a tough president on our enemies. He is a deal maker, even with the most evil organizations, regimes in the world like the Taliban. Trump promised to bring all the troops, American troops overseas, home. Didn't bring anybody home. We still, to this day, have troops in Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and 120 other countries. The only troops that have come back are from Afghanistan, partially because of Trump's peace deal and partially because of Biden's incompetence. Iran, yes, Trump did kill a major Iranian general and then stopped. And then allowed Iran to bomb one of our bases. And just recently, I saw him, this is not hearsay, I saw him on television say, or in a press conference say, when somebody asked him, why didn't the U.S. respond when 100 servicemen were injured by the Iranian response? And he was like, injured? They had headaches. Big deal. That's why I believe Kelly when he says that Trump has no respect for American servicemen. That's why I believe Kelly when he says Trump had no respect for the servicemen who died or wounded in battle. Because he shows it. He showed it just the other day in his comment about, or whenever it was that press conference happened about the Iranian attack on American servicemen. He did nothing. He did nothing about Iran. And he spent most of his administration while he get out of the Obama deal, which was a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And then he steps in and he wants to cut a deal with Iran. So he did a good thing by getting out of the Iran deal, one of the stars that he gets from the first administration. And then he does a bad thing by wanting to negotiate a better deal with Iran. There's no deal making with Iran. Finally, the one area where he was good. He was really good. And this is an area I know a lot of people who this is the crucial area in which they are voting this time, and that is Israel. He was good for Israel. He was, one of the better presidents for Israel in terms of moving the embassy to Jerusalem, in terms of supporting Israel when it needed to. I mean, he, again, wanted to negotiate. Everything was negotiation. Abraham Accords were excellent. I don't think Trump had a lot to do with it. It was mainly his son-in-law. But it was good. It happened, and it was a good thing. Very positive. He did try to force Israel, try to talk Israel into agreeing to this peace deal that he had crafted. Luckily, the Palestinians turned it down before he could put too much pressure on Israel to agree to it. It was a two-state solution. with the Palestinians. Luckily, the Palestinians turned it down, so we didn't have to face him forcing Israel to accept it. But he was good to Israel. And if that's the issue, then I get it. I get it. If that's the only issue, yeah, I mean, he's better for Israel than any other candidate. It's, by the way, a reason for, funnily enough, this is funny to some extent, the anti-Semites of the right, the Nick Fuenteses and the other white supremacists of various types, are not voting for Trump because he's too pro-Israel. He's too pro-Israel. That is weird, right? That is super weird, but interesting. So there's an issue where, yeah, okay, I get it. All right, quickly, domestic issues. I mean, here I'll give a little bit more credit to Trump. His nominees to the Supreme Court were pretty good. They overturned Roe versus Wade, which they will suffer in hell forever for doing. That is horrific. But any Republican would have appointed people who would have done that. So it's hard to blame. But they're also good on other things. They're certainly good on the administrative state, on shrinking the role of government in the economy. They're good on property rights up to a point. They seem to be good on free speech. They've got quite a bit yet to prove on that. But yeah, the Kavanaugh, not a good judge. I think he's a weakling. I don't like Kavanaugh. Gorsuch is maybe the best judge on the court right now. And Barrett has been a positive surprise to me. I thought she would be terrible. When she was nominated, I was horrified. She seemed like a religious nut to me. And yeah, she turned out to be okay. Now, I don't think Trump gets any credit for those. Somebody says here, Trump has a lot of good qualities. I'd like a list. I'd like a list of his good qualities. He doesn't get credit for it because basically these were the nominations that the Federalist Society gave him, and he took them. The credit here goes to the Federalist Society, and their lists are good lists if you're a conservative. Free speech. Is Trump good on free speech? Trump is open to solutions that are out of the box. No, he's not. Is he? Maybe he'd embrace 2025 if he was. Where's he open to solutions out of the box? Examples, not just statements. Where are the examples? What is a solution out of the box that he was open to? Oh, the other good thing he did was he fast-tracked the vaccine for COVID. That was, among the top 3-4 things that he did. And now he's got RFK telling him that vaccine is killing people and he should have never done it. So what is Trump's view of free speech? I don't think he believes in it for a second. I think it's part of he just doesn't care about the American political system. I think that to him, what matters is he being criticized? He doesn't like that, and he doesn't want that, and he doesn't believe the president should be allowed to be criticized because, nobody criticized Putin in Russia. Nobody criticizes Xi in China, and he likes that. He has a real affinity for that. So I don't think he believes in free speech. And you see that in his often stated positions about the Washington Post, or about CBS, about something else, where they criticize him. I take them off the air. I'm going to use the license, or I'm going to go after Bezos. He's the owner of the Washington Post. They criticize me too much, so I'm going to sick the Justice Department onto Amazon. Yeah, Nick says his writing letters to North Korea is out of the box solution, which is a horrific one. It's a horrific one. So here's Nick, right? He says Trump has a lot of good qualities, and then I ask him to specify, and he gives one, which is a bad one. Writing letters to North Korea, not a good solution. And then he says he isn't Kamala Harris. That's what it boils down to. So don't tell me he has good qualities. He doesn't. He's just not Kamala. Okay, I get that. The other day, Donald Trump suggested that flag burning be banned by law and people be prosecuted. What else? What other speech will he not like and ban it? Now, the Democrats are awful in free speech, and I think Trump is awful in free speech. I think luckily for us, we have a First Amendment. We have a Supreme Court that's pretty good in free speech. I think that they're both going to be hampered by the Supreme Court in their efforts to restrain free speech. I hope I'm right, because otherwise we're in deep trouble, no matter who wins. Immigration, I don't have time to go into immigration, but Trump was not particularly good on immigration. If you hate illegal immigrants and you want them deported, he deported far fewer immigrants than Obama did in 4 years. He released more criminals into the population than Biden has. I can show you the graphs if you're really, really interested. So if you buy it. But again, what is the solution? The solution? Deporting 20 million people? A, he can't do it. B, it would be unbelievably destructive to the American economy, way of life, and everything. And the solution to immigration is a complete revamping of immigration law, to increase legal immigration, which Trump has not proposed, which Trump has not sided with. Trump has no solution. Indeed, Trump was against the bipartisan bill that was going to do a lot to solve the so-called problem of illegal immigration. And he stopped it because for him, immigration is a political issue. It's not an economic, cultural rights issue. It's just a political issue. And he loves having that issue around the neck of the Biden administration. And that's all it is for him. He doesn't care one iota. Nick says, is it a bad thing to communicate with enemies? Yes, absolutely. One should not communicate with one's enemies. That is, I think, a key foreign policy principle. Once somebody becomes your enemy, you don't communicate with them. Domestic issues. What else woke. Here's another place where he's better than Kamala, right? I mean, he's not going to allow woke in government and all this woke stuff in universities and Title IX and Title VII and Title whatever. That's good. That's good. There is a woke right, which is a little scary, which he will be supportive of. But right now, the woke left is powerful, and Trump will be good on that in that he will not provide government support for woke. That's good. So he has that going for him. Okay, quickly on economy. I've said a million times about tariffs. Tariffs are not, and I'm happy to do a show on this. Tariffs are not a foreign policy issue. They're an economic issue. They're unbelievably bad. They are bad policy through and through. The tariffs he imposed were not just on China. They were across the board. And they were and are horrific for Americans and the American economy. The number of jobs lost to tariffs is substantial. The inefficiency in America because of the tariffs that Trump put in were bad, were high. And the increased cost to American consumers was significant. So tariffs, he was awful on it. He's still awful on it. But even tariffs on China, not the right strategy. You got to come up with a real foreign policy strategy to confront China. Tariffs, if you really thought it through, would not be part of such a strategy. If you understand how tariffs actually work in the world. Deportation of illegal immigrants will be massively devastating to the U.S. economy. Massively devastating, particularly to construction business, but generally to small businesses all across the country who employ these people. You're taking 10, 11, maybe 20, I don't know how many people, who are working in the United States, producing, creating value, shutting them down, devastating. And this idea that by deporting them, you free up housing and the cost of housing will go down. In a very short run, maybe that's true at a massive cost because you're losing productive individuals. So, but it's only a short-term solution. The solutions to housing have to be long-term, not just a one-time shock to the system. He'll be good on energy. The one thing domestically is unequivocally good on, right? He's energy. His administration is likely to be impacted by some of the stuff Alex Epstein has done and some of the energy people who support him. He'll be very good on energy, fracking and all of that stuff, nuclear potentially. Although, again, who knows with Elon Musk standing by his side if he'll actually be good on this. But he'll probably be good on energy. Taxes, he'll try to extend his tax cuts. The tax cuts were not that substantial, except for the corporate tax, which is good. Even the Democrats are not suggesting really changing the corporate taxes that much. And then he wants all kinds of no taxes on tips, no taxes on Social Security, no taxes on this, no taxes on that. Multiplying the complexity of our tax system, not a good thing. So he's marginally good on taxes, but only marginally so. Spending, he was awful on spending the first time around. No reason to think he's not going to be awful on spending this time around. He wants to achieve his goals, and he'll spend whatever it takes in order to achieve it. The deficit would explode. Entitlements and welfare, he has vowed not to touch them. You can't cut government spending. You can't reduce the deficit. You can't reduce debt without dealing with entitlements. Donald Trump has said in advance, untouchable. We're not going to touch them. We're not going to do anything about it. I mean, it's just insane if you care about these things. This is a big one. Fed independence. Now, I do not believe there should be a Federal Reserve. Private banking, gold standard, however you want it, that should, we're not going to talk about it now, that should be what should be. But if you have a Fed, it is unbelievably important that the Fed be as independent as possible. It's never independent completely. But it's been mostly independent under most presidents. Mostly, not completely, far from it. Trump wants to do away completely with Fed independence. He wants the Fed to report to him. He wants to tell the Fed what interest rates should be. He has already said he will lower interest rates. Now, what will that do? Well, it depends. If he continues with the deficits and he lower interest rates, what you'll get is inflation. Likely. And certainly nothing good. Instead of relying on markets to determine, you'll have the President of the United States determining interest rates. It's massive additional intervention, massive additional central planning. Now, not just at a stupid economic level, but now also at a political level to manipulate the economy to adjust to the politics of the situation. He has vowed to lower mortgage rates. How he's going to do that, nobody knows. By just putting price caps. He has talked about price caps on interest rates, on mortgage rates. Price caps on mortgage rates. I mean, God, the perversion and distortions that creates. And again, that's central planning. Some of the worst type of central planning. And here he shows that he doesn't have a capitalist bone in his body. He doesn't believe in freedom. He doesn't believe in free markets. He doesn't believe in capitalism. He is a central planner of the right. He is a central planner from the right. However you want to define the right. What about inflation? Is he better on inflation? Well, if he wants to intervene with the Fed, and he wants to cap interest rates on mortgages, and he wants to keep spending government money, then he's awful on inflation. Now, isn't it true that we didn't have inflation when Trump was president? Yeah, we had very little inflation when Trump was president. That's true of Obama, too. Do we want to go back to Obama because there was no inflation? And who should be blamed for Biden's inflation? Well, Biden, certainly, with the stimulus package in January of 2021 and with all the government spending following it. But who supported the stimulus package in 2021? Republicans. And one of the things that Trump criticized about Biden's stimulus package in 2021 was that it didn't provide enough money for Americans. He would have made it bigger. I can't remember the exact numbers, but there was like, he would have given every American $2,000 more. And of course, the first impetus for inflation was the first stimulus package that Trump passed while he was president in the summer during COVID in 2020. And inflation was caused by Trump and Biden, by the deficits Trump created, by the stimulus from all the spending of 4 years, by the stimulus that he did. And again, I will challenge anybody, if you're interested about inflation, about how those became inflationary, listen to my Saturday show coming up. And Biden just doubled up on it. So Biden doesn't get off free, but you can't not blame part of the inflation on just economic fact, on Trump. Was the economy better under Trump than under Biden? Now, I don't have time to go over this. I've got graphs to prove this, but I will say this. Let's take out COVID. COVID distorts everything, right? So let's take COVID and post-COVID. So let's take Biden's last 2 years, 2023 and 2024. And let's take Trump's first 3 years, 17, 18, 19, and compare them. And they look very similar. Unemployment is, the number of people employed, employment participation rates, unemployment, I said unemployment, GDP growth, by every parameter, other than interest rates. Very similar. Inflation, slightly higher under Biden than Trump, but not significantly higher. Inflation is about 2.5% now over the last 2 years. It was around 2%, just under 2% maybe under Trump, something like that. I've got a whole graph here I was going to go through, graph, to show you first 3 years of Trump, last 2 years of Biden. They look very much the same. And if you look at Trump's economy and you look at the last few years of Obama's economy, very much the same. The reality is, the presidents do not have that much say about the economy. Trump did one really, really, really good thing economically, his best thing economically. The best thing Trump did economically was cut significantly the corporate tax rate. That was huge. Good for Trump for that, and Biden has benefited from it. But the U.S. economy, in spite of our politicians, in spite of all our politicians, in spite of all how awful they all are, in spite of all of that, our U.S. economy keeps chugging along, keeps growing, keeps creating jobs, people employed. And that's a tribute to whatever freedom exists in America. It's a tribute to the spirit of entrepreneurship that still exists in America. It's a tribute and a cause by our, relatively speaking, during certain periods, open immigration, or not open immigration, but robust immigration policies, which Trump is about to destroy. Immigration is a massive fuel for this economy, both legal and illegal. Massive fuel for this economy. So J.D. Vance tells you that if they deport all the immigrants, there'll be more houses because they'll vacate their houses and Americans can move in. That's true. But you also, what percentage of construction workers building new homes are illegal immigrants. So all those homes are not going to be built. And where are you going to get the workers for it? It's like unemployment's very low in the U.S. Labor participation rates are pretty high. And those kids sitting in their mother's basements who have chosen not to work, you think they're going to take a construction job? No matter how much money you pay them? You got to be kidding me. All right, here's the bottom line. And then I'll go to your super chats. The bottom line is that Donald Trump does not have the character or the commitment or understanding of the American system of government to be president of the United States. He is unqualified. Donald Trump is the one candidate in the history that I know of, in recent history at least, of the United States, who, maybe since FDR, who could basically turn around to the Supreme Court and tell them, force me. He's the one candidate who's shown, who's willing to not accept an election result. He's the one candidate who I think would be willing to explicitly, unquestionably violate the American Constitution if he thinks he can get away with it. I didn't mention this, but this is one of the scariest things about Trump. Trump has said that he wants to replace all the generals. He wants to replace the generals of our military with his people. And what does his people mean? People who will follow his commands, his instructions, including, potentially, instructions that are clear violations of the Constitution. He is willing to do that. He has said so. He doesn't want generals committed to the Constitution. Just read Kelly's comments on Trump. He wants generals committed to Donald Trump. Now, again, a scary scenario. So if you value the American system of government, put aside all the foreign policy stuff and all the domestic policy stuff, if you just value the American system of government and you think it's robust and you think it can survive bad presidents, and I think it can. I think it could survive Kamala. It survived Biden. It survived Obama, shockingly enough. It survived Bush. It can survive bad presidents as long as the system stays whole. I think the American system of government can survive Kamala Harris. Can it survive a Donald Trump? I don't know. If he gets everything he wants to get, if he does everything he's promised to do, I don't know that it can. And if you think the vice presidency is a springboard, can the American system survive a J.D. Vance and Nick Hawley and the Christian nationalists who are waiting in the wings to take over the Republican Party once Trump is done? I don't think we can survive that. Not as a free nation, not as a country of liberty. So for me, this is easy. I cannot vote for Donald Trump. I cannot vote for somebody who Tucker Carlson's going to have his ear. I cannot vote for somebody who invited Nick Fuentes for dinner. Well, he didn't invite Nick Fuentes. He invited, what's his name, the rapper, who's almost as bad as Nick Fuentes, and then Nick Fuentes showed up, right? And he wasn't kicked out. And don't tell me they didn't know who he was. I can't have I cannot vote. I cannot sanction. I cannot have on my conscience a vote for a thoroughly pragmatic, narcissistic, dishonest human being who is disrespectful and unknowledgeable regarding our Constitution. I think the future, I don't know that this country could survive another term of Donald Trump. I just don't know. I don't know what it sets us towards. All right. That was an hour and a half. All right, that's good. That's enough. If you want more of what I have to say about Trump, just go back to over the last 9 years of my podcasts, and you can find a bunch of stuff there. There's no end to my analysis, and it hasn't really changed that much. It's just been embellished with more and more content and more information. All right, we've got a bunch of Super Chat questions. I'm going to do a few things. One is, as I said, we'll leave that. I'm going to skip the questions that are not related to Trump for now. I will answer them, Oyvind, don't worry. I'm going to skip them now, and I know there are other ones over there that are unrelated. I'm going to focus on the ones related to Trump. And then if we have time, I'll do the non-Trump related. And let's see, what else do I want to say? Non-Trump related, if we have time. If not, I'll just carry them over to tomorrow, and I'll cover them tomorrow. So I will answer the questions, just might not be today. Yeah, and I also said earlier that there's certain questions I won't read. I'll try to catch them before I actually read them out loud. So I apologize for those of you who contributed money, and I'm not going to read your question, but as I said, there's certain things I don't want to do on my show. All right, David, in yesterday's show, you said that hypocrisy, this is another one that's kind of unrelated. Oh, God. All right, I'm going to answer this quickly because David put $50 into it, and so I'll do this quickly. In yesterday's show, you said that hypocrisy is overrated. Please concretize that statement. Yeah, let me give you an example. Let's say I say, and I make a big deal out of it, and it's on a campaign thing, and I make a big thing. The sanctity of marriage. You should never cheat on your wife. No, I'm sorry, that's not the one I wanted to use. Let's say you said you're a Christian, right? No sex before marriage. You shouldn't have sex before marriage. You shouldn't have sex with anybody other than the woman, that you marry. You should never have sex with anybody else. And then it turns out that this person who's campaigned on this, who's made a big deal out of this, he carries the cross, he's been sleeping around. He slept with his, before he got, he's not married, but he sleeps around. Now, you could say he's a hypocrite. But that's not his main sin. His main sin is having a stupid idea about sex. Having this idea that you don't have sex before marriage and you only sleep with somebody after you get married and all of that. That is his sin. That is what's really bad about him, is the bad ideas that he is practicing. And you can find that in a lot of different issues around hypocrisy. The issue is not being the hypocrite, it's what ideas do you stand by? Because usually the hypocrisy is, I'm standing by ideas that are bad for me. I'm standing by ideas that counter my nature as a human being. And of course, because of that, I do stuff that contradicts it. Okay, you're a hypocrite. No, you've got bad ideas. That's the most important part of the criticism against them. That's the more important stuff, right? And hypocrisy in that sense is overrated in that we keep calling people out on hypocrisy. What we should be calling them out is on their bad ideas, whether they live by them or not. In a sense, it's even worse when they live by them because they're bad ideas and they're destructive. I think hypocrisy is, in a sense, a necessary thing. If you're an altruist and you believe you should live for other people, but you're working hard in order to take care of you and your family, that's being a hypocrite. But that's good that you're a hypocrite. You're at least struggling. You're at least working to survive. Nature requires you to be a hypocrite in a sense. So change their ideas. It's the ideas that are the problem. Oh, I love it that Nick M., who's been poking me about Trump all the time, has now come out officially against sex. That is appropriate. I think that is very appropriate. Oh, God. All right, I'll answer this because it's quick. David asks, what percent does YouTube take from Super Chat money? Are Super Stickers also charged the same rate? Super Chat, Super Stickers treated the same. YouTube takes 30%, which is a lot. PayPal takes less than 5. Patreon takes less than 5. YouTube takes 30. So it's a lot. But they provide an incredible service. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's a lot. All right, let's see. Ian, $100. Thank you, Ian. For making your case, this is $100 is for making your case. My point, I think when it comes to January 6th, people focus too much on the riot and Trump's responsibility response and not enough on illegally asking his VP to not certify the election in violation of Constitution and duty. I agree with you. Well, I don't agree with you completely because I think they're both super horrific. But I mentioned both, so I'm with you on both of those being unbelievably important and his complete, unbelievable disregard for the Constitution of the United States. Troy, oh, I didn't even notice that. Troy did 500 Australian dollars. Thank you, Troy. Looking forward to meeting Troy in Brisbane in December. He says, value for value plus adding to the computer fund. Great content you're on. Thank you. Thank you, Troy. Really, really appreciate it. And yes, I still haven't bought the computer because still haven't had time. Hopefully tonight, I'm going out to dinner with my wife, and then it's computer buying time. All right, Paul. I'm not going to read your comment. I'm sorry, Paul. It's $50, and I feel bad about it. But again, I do not want, and I'm not going to use my platform to show any disrespect for Leonard. Obviously, I disagree with Leonard Peikoff, and I'm going to leave it at that. And I don't want to include any other language other than that in this, right? So while Paul is a big supporter of the Yaron Brook show, he's just talking about Leonard Peikoff's position about and the status of Leonard Peikoff's position about this, and I just don't want to give it voice because, as I said, Leonard is too much of a hero in my mind for me to put him down in any sense, other than to say I completely disagree with him about Trump, and he knows that. That is, he knows that. Leonard and I have had this conversation. Everything I've told you now, well, I told Leonard. It probably took about as long. I know exactly where it was, what restaurant it was, what was going on, but I have said it all. And I'm not going to tell you what his response was. Again, but he knows what I think, so it is what it is. Vadim. Yep. I mean, you already know my answer, Vadim, to that by everything I said on the show. And please, if you came in late to the show, you can listen. You can listen to the whole thing and get my full answer on every aspect of this and how it relates to other people's views on Trump. Andrew says Trump is not again $50. Thank you, all of you guys. $50, $100. Troy, the $500, and David, two $50 questions. Thank you. Really, really appreciate the support. We've blown through the target for today, and I think as a consequence, I'll see what the final numbers are going to be. But we made my stretch goal, I think, for the month. We were doing very poorly yesterday and the day before, but today I think has made up for that. We'll see what the final number comes in at tomorrow. Andrew says, Trump is not a Uroikian figure persecuted by the world. No, he's not. A second-hander is against the world because his self-esteem is made of others, yes. And it always threatened by them. Please comment on his romantic notion of Trump as a crusader taking on the world. I really don't understand it. I don't think I don't know what world exactly he's taking on. He is, as I've said often since 2015, he is a low self-esteem human being who gets offended and insulted by anybody who does not embrace him, who does not cherish him. And in that sense, he is a very low self-esteem person. He is not being persecuted by the world. The world sees him, I think, to a large extent for what he really is. Even the rational people out there see Trump for what he is. They see the narcissism. They see the power lust. They see the bad character, the dishonesty. And they fight against him, and he rebels against that. But that's not him taking. He's taking on the media, but the media is not that unfair to Trump. In my view, the media is way too friendly to Trump. It doesn't attack him on a principle basis. It doesn't attack him on the right things to attack him. I think the media is being super nice to Trump. Super nice to Trump. So, Trump is offended by anybody criticizing him anywhere. So he gives the appearance of taking on the world. But what's taking on the world? The only issues in which he stands up is immigration. That's it. That's his issue. It's the one I disagree with him fundamentally about. And it's the only issue that really he stands out and is unique and separate from everybody else. Other than that, for the most part, he's kind of left. All right, let's see. Lucinda says, can't watch live right now because I'm calling with my girlfriend. Much more important, I agree. Just want to remind everybody to reach those donation goals. Yeah, we've blown through them today. Hopper Campbell, could you do a pre-election show reacting to Sam Harris' points versus Ben Shapiro's points? Ben comes across as a clever lawyer engaging in mental gymnastics to justify a boot like Trump. I agree with you. I don't want to. I mean, it will take a huge amount of time. Generally, I think Sam Harris is right on most of the stuff. I think some of the stuff he's a little over the top. I think Ben is doing mental gymnastics. And the one time I met with Ben, Ben said, "Look, I'm really anti-Trump, but he can't afford to be because his whole income depends on him being pro-Trump." So he didn't say that. That's my interpretation. But I think Ben knows he's selling out a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's no question. If you watch that, the only issue again where I think Trump is better than Harris that comes out in what I've watched of the debate between the two of them is Israel. And that's why I think Barry Weiss supports Trump, is primarily on the Israel and on woke. Those are the two issues. So you can watch that. I might take snippets out of it to show. I'll see if I have time on the weekend. Thomas says, I'm voting for Kamala, even though, one, she's terrible. Two, I'm in California, so it doesn't matter. I didn't vote in 2016 or 2020. I want once to vote against Trump. I don't need your approval. Just wanted to donate to you. I know you don't need my approval, Tom. I appreciate the donation. Thank you. James says, I vehemently oppose Trump's irrational mob. I vehemently opposed Kamala's nihilistic mob. Trump's irrational mob is more enthusiastic. I fear them. Kamala's irrational mob is weak, disintegrated, and lacks consistency. I agree with that, although Trump himself is a disintegrator. His mob is much more misintegrated around really, really bad ideas. And I think Trump's mob long-term is much more dangerous and much more likely to win than Kamala's mob because it couches itself as pro-American. Michael, does our current generation of young people resent the way? Okay, I'm gonna wait on that, Michael. I'm gonna wait on that. Michael says, you say you're pessimistic about where we're heading. Can you concretize that? Pessimistic as in thrown in a gulag, there's no food on the shelves, pessimistic, or slower economic growth and mean tweets, pessimistic? Neither. I'm pessimistic in the sense of I do think that we are likely to see real restrictions on free speech. I don't think there's going to be no food on the shelves, but I do worry if slow economic growth or no economic growth. I do worry about war with China and kind of the U.S. Democrats and Republicans, unfortunately, right now pushing for war with China rather than trying to work it so that China never thinks about war with America because they know the consequences, and B, trying to bring about positive change in China, which I think is possible. So I worry about war with China. That could be pretty catastrophic. I worry about political violence. I worry about a lot more political violence in our streets, rioting, BLM, January 6th style from either or both sides. I don't quite see a civil war, but I do see increased violence between the two sides. And ultimately, I worry about our system of government. I worry that the presidency is going to become more and more and more authoritarian. Checks and balances are going to be less and less. I worry that the trend where Congress becomes less and less effectual and meaningful and has a role, it has a smaller and smaller role, that the court is the only bulwark against authoritarianism. But how long will that last? So I worry that within, 10, 20 years, we go the authoritarian route, that there are no more elections. That worries me. So there's a lot to be worried about. Brian just came in with $50. Thank you, Brian. Sorry if I missed it, but have you read Liz Cheney's Oath and Honor? I recommend it for anyone who doubts Trump's complete disregard for the U.S. Constitution and how dangerous he was and is. No, I haven't read it. Thank you. By the way, it's Brian's first super chat, and it's $50, so really, really appreciate that. I haven't read it, but, I've talked about his disregard for the U.S. Constitution. And he has. And this is why I fear authoritarianism in 10, 20 years, because Trump is going to maximize power in the executive branch. He's getting old, so there are only so many terms he can keep going for. I think we really risk with him being the first president since maybe FDR, say no to the Supreme Court and see what happens. There's a lot that I think Trump can do to undermine the Constitution and undermine the rule of law and move us in the direction of authoritarianism, even if he doesn't bring it about. And I don't think Trump or his followers care, because the followers, the passionate MAGA, because I don't think they care about the American system of government. I don't think they understand it, they know it, or they value it. All they care about is defeating the left. All they care about is their parts of their agenda, most of which are really anti-liberty and anti-freedom. Thank you, Brian, for the recommendation. It doesn't surprise me that she takes that view, and it doesn't surprise me that that is the case, because I can see without reading her book, I can see all of that. There's another off-topic one. All right, Graham says, the right rules social media, especially with their long-running acts. I think this is the main reason they evade the events of January 6th and the election denial. People go on social media and are lambasted with so-called proof. Maybe, I don't know who controls social media. Certainly Twitter is mostly of the right, but I don't know. But that's what I'm exposed to. There certainly is a left element there. I don't know about Facebook. I don't know about other social media platforms. They might be more. But I do think that the right has basically captured the issue of January 6th. And the left has not been able to articulate the case. It's not being able to really make an issue of January 16th the way they should have. Why exactly? I don't know. I'd have to think about it more. I don't think it's just social media. Stephen, during the Obama years, I could talk politics with my parents. Now I say one negative thing about Trump and they get really emotional and defensive. It's sad and weird and scary. Like I can't insult the dear leader. That is something I didn't mention today. Thank you, Stephen, because it's a big issue. And that is the kind of following that Trump has created. This used to actually exist on the left with Obama. There were people on the left where you couldn't say anything negative about Obama. They'd flip out. They'd get super emotional. You couldn't discuss it. And Trump, from the beginning, has the same effect on Americans, on people on the right. It's the tribalism. And it's maybe the most scary part of all of this. Because you saw that, you've seen that in my chat for years now, right? People who just, they can't make an argument for Trump. So they just flip out. They just become emotionalists. And there's so many of this MAGA, they immediately resort to emotions and they immediately resort to insults. Because there is no, because you cannot insult the dear leader. And that effect, that leader worship, is probably the worst thing, but it's not about Trump. It's about his following. It's about what he has brought out in the American people, which is unbelievably scary and unexpected. That is the one thing that's been the most unexpected thing about Trump. It's what he has revealed about Americans. What he's revealed about your parents. I know other parents who are the same way. It's this, personality worship. Again, I'm not saying every person who supports Trump has this, but a lot of people do. A lot of people do, including a lot of people who've been and are in this chat. So, I am happy to be challenged with facts. But that's not what I get. I get emotionalism. But Kamala, that's about it. That's the most factual you can get. It's motivation through fear. Yeah, motivation through fear. Motivation by a negative. But you're making a positive case for Trump. Make a positive case for Trump. Could you comment more on the Harris and Shapiro debate from the other day? I disagree with your previous statement that he was good. All he seemed to argue is that Trump's character. Is that enough? January 6th is not Trump's character. I mean, it's a consequence of Trump's character. And Harris did argue January 6th. I'm trying to think of some other things I watched that I saw. I haven't seen the whole debate, so I don't know. But I think he argued Trump's character. I think he's right. I think character is a lot of it. It's not everything, but it's a lot of it. That's why I covered character first on today's show. So do I agree with everything Harris says? No. But I disagree with almost everything Shapiro said. Almost everything. And the fundamental, I think the thing I agreed with both on Harris is Kamala is a normal politician. Bad, awful, horrible, but normal. And our political system is robust enough to handle her. She can't go completely off the tracks, particularly if the Republicans win the Senate, which I think they will. Trump is not normal. He's an aberration. And I'm not sure a political system is robust enough to deal with him. I'm just not sure. So that, I think, is a big issue. And that, I think, was something Harris was pushing, which I agree with completely. All right, if we have time, I'll get back to the other $20 questions that are on here. If not, I will cover them all tomorrow. I'm going to go now to the under $20 questions. Jason asked, I don't know if this is related, it's somewhat related. Is a prostitute who enjoys and puts effort into their work a better person than one who does it only out of desperation? It's the only positive I can find in Trump's character by analogy. I don't think I don't know if a prostitute is better if she enjoys and puts effort into her work. Desperation is... I don't know that the analogy works, is my point. I don't know that it works. I don't know that I want to really push it and see in what detail it works. Yeah, I'm not going to answer that, Matt. Sorry. All right. Friend Hopper says, I sent you an email just before the show started. Don't read it now, but this is money. For when you find it, it's titled Your Japan Trip. Thank you, Friend Hopper. I'll look for it. Ginger, I honestly believe that Harris Biden are weak and there will be war. Trump is a loose cannon, hoping that scary enough to keep dictators in check. I cannot forget Afghanistan. Yeah, neither can I. But it was Trump that set Afghanistan up by signing a deal with Taliban, which is the peace deal with Taliban, which is the ultimate sign of weakness. It is Trump who tried to cut a deal with Iran through his administration, got out of the Obama deal, but tried to reestablish a deal himself. And Trump is unpredictable. He's a loose cannon, which could lead us directly into war. He could be a loose cannon in a way that creates war. I also think nothing was weaker from a foreign policy perspective than Trump groveling before the brutal, homicidal dictator of North Korea. That projected weakness. I think Trump set up weakness, and then the bad guys in the world looked at it and said, well, Trump was incredibly weak. Now we've got Biden. He's even weaker. All right, we can start wars. I don't know. I think a war with China is avoidable. Would Trump avoid it, or would Trump jump into it? And who are the people that Trump is going to have around him? Are there people who are qualified to be doing foreign policy and defense? Or are they yes men to a president who is ignorant of most issues around foreign policy and defense? Because the first term, he had really good people who told him, no, that's not a good idea, don't do that. Now, a lot of them he fired, but he never really got to experience Trump full-on independent in foreign policy. This time you will, because you'll have yes men surrounding him. Now, it'll be a good sign if Pompeo gets a senior job in the new Trump administration. That'll be a good sign. But I don't know that that's going to happen, because Pompeo is better. It's not good, but he's better. But the rest of the people who are surrounding him on foreign policy are just awful, and basically will surrender American interests to the bad guys. Imagine if Trump's first action is to force Zelensky basically to give in to Putin, give him the territory that Russia has occupied in Ukraine, and commit never to joining NATO. Imagine if Trump does that. Is that a sign of strength or weakness? That is unbelievable weakness. I mean, Trump admires Putin. That's weakness, not strength. And he's not a loose cannon. He's not a loose cannon. What did he do in his first administration, foreign policy-wise, that suggests that he's a loose cannon? I can't think of anything. He is super predictable, if you understand the people around him. Because to a large extent, he's an empty vessel. And the people around him in the second term are going to be a lot worse A lot worse than the people around him in the first term. Oh, Trump can force Zelensky because Trump can stop the spigot. Although it's going to be an interesting conflict. Congress has passed a law that allocates certain funds and weapon systems to Ukraine. Can Trump come in and say, I'm disregarding that law and I'm not going to send the money to Ukraine? Probably not, but there's a constitutional crisis for you. Right? Who wins? Congress or the president? I mean, God help us. So I don't see him as a loose cannon at all. I see him as completely predictable, siding with the dictators, with the exception of China, and therefore bringing us much closer to war with China, rather than outmaneuvering China in a way that makes it clear to China you shouldn't go to war with us, and weakens China. I just don't see him having the smarts to do that. Not your average algorithm. A year of leftist BLM and Antifa violent riots across almost every city in the country. Let's ignore that significantly and focus on the one and only right-wing riot on January 6th. I wasn't talking about the left and its virtues and vices. I was talking about the vices of Trump. And January 6th is his vice. You could also argue that the fact that Trump couldn't find a way to eliminate that violence of BLM, to muster the governors to take a stand against BLM and to stop the riots. The Trump, instead of actually helping stop those riots, probably encouraged them. You could argue that too. But, this is the point about people that take your attitude, not your average algorithm. It's like, I have to criticize everything I criticize about Trump, I have to criticize about the left, otherwise it's not legitimate. That's bizarre. I spent months criticizing BLM. Right now, I'm doing a show on Trump, not about BLM, not about the riots of the left. You wanted to do a show on the riots of the left? Happy to do that. You can sponsor it. But what's the relevancy on a show on Trump to bring up BLM? But what's the relevancy of January 6th? Now, in addition, there's an important sense in which January 6th, the one riot, which was a riot, no question about it, and you have to, is worse than the BLM riots. Why? Because it was an attack on the very nature of the system of government of the United States. It was a clear attempt at not allowing for peaceful transition of power. That is much more dangerous than 100 BLM riots. Much more dangerous. And again, the fact that people, it worries me that you can't see it. It worries me that you can't see it. Matt, on Trump's pragmatism, as an example, how can we prove that he generally supports abortion in order to gain votes and not for any principled reason? I think on abortion, Trump, my view is, and I can't prove this, my view is generally Trump doesn't care. The only issue that Trump has been consistent on for 40 years is that he hates free trade. Only issue that Trump has been consistent on for 40 years is his support of tariffs. That's the only issue I know that he's been consistent on. On abortion, he used to be pro-choice. In 2016, when he ran, he was anti-abortion. And he appointed judges that were anti-abortion, that overturned Roe versus Wade. Now, he switched back to being pro-abortion to a point, right? To a point. So he's gone back and forth. 2016, he was anti-abortion. He called it murder, and he appealed to the evangelicals. But again, the only thing he's been consistent for 40 years is tariffs. Maybe immigration, I'm not sure. But tariffs, I know, because I remember him in the 80s riling against imports from Japan and the horror of the trade deficit with Japan. And he was horrified by it. And we need tariffs on Japan. Hi. Liam says, did you see J.D. Vance and Rogan? No, I haven't. I find it hard to watch 3-hour Rogan shows. But I'll watch it because J.D. Vance is a particular focus of interest for me. I'm interested in J.D. Vance. Jason, 5 top positive things under Obama Trans-Pacific Partnership. Gays in the military, same-sex marriage, stem cell research, kill bin Laden. Is that about right? Can you do one for Trump? 5 top positive things. Trans-Pacific Partnership, which never happened, right? Trump wouldn't sign it. That was an awful thing. Gays in the military, yeah, that's good. Same-sex marriage, that's good. Stem cell research, mixed, because he banned one type of stem cell research and approved others. So he was mixed, Obama, on stem cells. Bin Laden killed. What else was positive in Obama? I can't remember. God. Oh, yeah, the budget deal he cut with Republicans, which actually caused, in the last 6 years of the Obama administration, for deficits to kind of flatline and not increase, and government spending as a percentage of GDP actually went down as a consequence of his deal with Republicans. So that would be certainly one of the top 5 things under Obama. Top 5 things under Trump. Top 5 things under Trump. 1, cutting the corporate tax rate. 2, not the whole tax cutting bill, which is very mixed, but cutting the top tax cutting the tax bracket for corporations. That was a good thing. 2nd, moving embassy to Jerusalem. 3, God, I mean, it's tough, right? Appointing Gorsuch. I'm not going to give credit to the other 2 yet, because I don't like Kavanaugh and Barrett. We're yet to see, although I find her much, much more interesting than I expected her to be. 4, so we did the Supreme Court, we did taxes, we did that. Oh, energy, opening up, not as much as I expected, so not as good as I would have thought, but opening up to energy, opening up energy markets. And 5, at the regulatory agency level, doing some limited, unfortunately, deregulation. I'm not sure, I might have missed something. But the deregulation was very minimal. Keystone Pipeline is nice, but it's not that big of a deal. Yeah, so, inflation was low, but inflation has basically been low since the 90s. So inflation was low for everybody since the 90s. Joseph, a New York City photographer I know once took photos of one of his properties. Instead of paying him, he essentially told him to put his name Trump on his resume. Was payment enough? Yeah, I mean, Trump was very good at, instead of paying him, he essentially told him to put Trump on his resume. Was payment enough? Yeah, I mean, Trump is big on marketing, and he's got his name, and he knows what he's doing. I can't argue with that. All right, how are we doing in time? Oh, we need a... I sincerely do not know what is best option to delay a route to decline. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah, I'm not going to answer that one. Wesley, as a Kamala voter, I'm disgusted by her mediocrity. Worse than Hillary, who at least was intelligently experienced. Is this how Oz felt about Bob Dole? No, because Bob Dole was incredibly experienced. He had been senator for many, many years. He knew the system. He knew how to manipulate it. So was McCain. I don't know that you've ever had... Maybe it's how Democrats felt about George Bush Jr., who was a nothing. Had been governor of Texas, but really a nothing. I think George Bush Jr. much more similar to Kamala. Bob Dole was in the war, and he'd been a senator, and he was horrible, but and a horrible senator, but he was not a Kamala. Kamala was a nothing. I think the W was the comparison. 2000 election. Michael Sanders, in a free society, would government issue IDs exist, or are they inherently a rights violation and invasion of privacy? There would be no government-issued IDs in a free society. Unless you needed one because, I don't know, other countries demanded passports, and so the government issued passports as a courtesy to its citizens so they could travel abroad. But no government-issued ID is certainly not required. No driver's licenses. Driver's licenses would be issued, I think, ultimately by insurance companies who would be liable for the quality of your driving. Rajiv says, Touts Funny announced at Ocon 2024 a new book, Art of Thinking, and a revamp of Dr. Peikoff's website. None of them materialized so far any rational reason. Yeah, they're just delayed for technical issues around building the website with the website, and Art of Thinking, I think, is just getting the final steps in editing. So there's no conspiracy. There's nothing going on beyond that. Matt, wasn't trying to dunk on anyone with my earlier super chat, just wanted a deeper understanding. I can't remember what the Matt was. But I think it's important to analyze the split between the two more valuable than explaining why Scott is wrong. The split between whom? Between me and I'm looking for Matt. Me and Leonard. I mean, just, evaluate the facts as I present them, evaluate the facts as he presents them, and make a decision. And if you want a deeper analysis on what is causing us to have the deeper disagreement, it ain't happening anytime soon. Clark, Arnold Schwarzenegger just unapologetically endorsed Harris, saying Trump is dangerous. I agree with Arnold, although I don't like Arnold as a politician. He's a nice guy, not a good politician. Clark says Trump is not a fascist in a sense. He wants to build a 1,000-year Reich. This is a man who wants to build condos and play golf. No, I think this is a man who he could have built condos or played golf. He doesn't have to be president of the United States for that at all. He doesn't have to run. This is a man who wants the adulation of the crowd. This is a man who wants adulation. That's what he wants. He's a narcissist. He's built the condos and he's played golf. Why is he running for president? Because he wants adulation. He wants the Trump name to be even bigger. He's also a man that might very well want his son to be the next president. No matter what happens this election, I would not be surprised if Trump Jr. is running next time. His wife runs the Republican National Committee, and Trump would love a legacy. And the legacy is President of the United States as a family business. So he has a lot of narcissistic reasons to be president. I agree with you, he's not a fascist in a sense of a 1,000-year Reich or having a vision for America or knowing or wanting to build something specific. He just vaguely wants to have the power and wants to have the adulation and would love for his family to continue on that path. Not your average algorithm. Are Antifa and BLM state-protected gangs? If Trump wins, they will be out in force again. Well, I don't think they're state-protected, but they are gangs. Certainly Antifa is. BLM is a little bit more complicated, but it's a bad organization, an evil organization that's being exposed, I think, for much of its evil. But Antifa is a violent gang. I don't think it's state-protected. I don't think it's state-protected under Biden, and I don't think it's state-protected under Trump. Not your average algorithm. Suppose Trump does win and the Republicans control the House and Senate. Can you think of any positive thing they will do? More extreme corporate tax cuts, significant deregulation? No, I don't think you'll see significant deregulation because I don't think they believe in significant deregulation. They'd have to convince Josh Hawley, and I don't think he'd go with it. I think tax cuts, Republicans are always good on that, is possible. I don't think anything significant because there are too many deficit hawks to do that. So they maybe another cut to the corporate tax, maybe, but I don't know. They keep the tax cuts that Trump passed in 2017 expire next year. So they would definitely keep those. What else positive would they do? I mean, they'd get rid of some of the woke stuff. That would be good. I don't know if they have enough votes in the Senate. That would be a question. Because remember, you need 60 votes in the Senate. They'd get rid of some of the woke stuff, at like universities and stuff. They won't stop government funding of universities, sadly. They won't reform Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. I don't think they would pass any real deregulatory bills, although one could hope. So taxes is the best I think one can hope for. And maybe the woke stuff, that would be really good. That would be better than even taxes. Maybe they would get rid of some of that. I mean, there might be other realms. Maybe I'm missing something. Oh, energy. So, yeah, I think on energy we'd get some good stuff. I think maybe you'd get deregulation of nuclear. Maybe you'd get more opening up of places to frack and to drill for oil and gas, which is all good. Maybe Alaska. Although Trump, towards the end, was shutting places down, so he wasn't as good at the end as he was in the beginning when the governor of Texas was the head of energy. I'm trying to think what else they would be good. The pipeline, Keystone Pipeline, would be reintroduced. Yeah, I can't think. Not many good things. They'd pass a bill to criminalize burning the flag, and the Supreme Court would overturn that bill. Kabuta, how can you really know who won a close election if you can vote without proof of identity? Because people have gone back and checked the voting rolls and checked who voted, and you can't vote. You have to identify as somebody, and if the same two people try to vote for the same thing, it's not that easy to vote without identity, without proof of identity, or to cheat on voting. And there are a variety of different mechanisms by which the voting authorities double check in the background to see if people are not eligible to vote or voting or not voting. So votes are disqualified. They always are in every election. It's just not as robust as I think they should be. But there's zero reason to believe that in this particular election there was any more fraud than any other election. There's no reason to believe that the votes in these particular counties, remember Georgia, for example, everybody in an authority, in a position of authority regarding the election was a Republican. And they told Trump unequivocally, you lost. There was just no fraud here. Just in every case in which people presented so-called proof or theory about the fraud, it was debunked. It was debunked. Somebody's asking about right-wing woke. I will do a show on right-wing woke soon. Let's get this election over, and I'll do a show on right-wing woke. I think there is such a thing as right-wing woke that Konstantin Kisin has identified, and now is kind of everybody's talking about, and I think it's a real thing. Eyal, what would Trump's policy in Iran look like in a second term? He'd try to cut a deal. He would immediately send envoys and try to cut a deal. He might use Saudi Arabia as an intermediary. It's the same policy he had the first time. Now, I don't know if he'd tell Israel to let Israel unleash on them first and then cut a deal. I don't know. But because it's hard to tell what the sequence of events are. It could be that this weekend Iran attacks Israel, and then right after the election, Israel just hammers the Iranians. And then that's a very different circumstances under which a Trump or Kamala administration come to the foray. Or nothing happens. It's hard to tell. But generally, his tendency is deal-making. It's the same as what he would try to do ultimately with Hamas. He would try to cut a deal. He says now, let Israel finish it, but he'll get impatient with that, and he will want to cut a deal. What was the actual economic justification for shifting to a fiat currency? Surely it was, I'm going to leave that for tomorrow. Let's do that separately. Alejandro says, thank you for being a voice of reason. Really appreciate it, Alejandro. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Undo. All right. Answer. Thank you, Alejandro. Matt says, is being concerned with population growth rational? I don't think so. I mean, it factors into thinking about the long term, like what happens to the human population if we're really not having kids. It's also an interesting issue about why the population is not growing. That is, why people don't want to have kids. That is interesting. It's a cultural phenomena that is of interest. But for any given country, I don't think one should be concerned about population growth. I think that is, and plus, it takes a few hundred years to really manifest itself, and you don't know what's going to happen in a few hundred years, and you don't know how all these things are changing. So it's just not that interesting for the United States right now. Now, if I was in South Korea or in Japan, it certainly is an issue one has to think about in terms of just the economy and the structure and how things are going. But no, as an individual, I don't think one should be concerned about it. No. All right. All right, I have a few more minutes, so let me take on some of these $20 questions quickly. Let's see. All right. This is Oyvind. These are questions unrelated to Trump. Hi, Yaron. Have been trading the markets using technical analysis for years. It went well, but it was too time consuming, and I had a big upside on following my own plans more strictly. Looking at S&P and NASDAQ from a TA, I'm not sure what TA is, a perspective, technical analysis perspective, looks kind of bearish. Personally, I think this election will be used as an excuse for market correction, that the institution's putting some fear on retailers. Want to share your thoughts on the subject. I'm not a technical analysis, and I don't understand technical analysis, and I'm not a fan of technical analysis. But I understand people use it, and some are successful at it. My view is that the market is probably, I don't know how it's going to respond to the election. I think it's probably projecting a Trump victory, but I don't know how it will respond to a Trump victory, because if Trump tries to manipulate the Fed, it could be bullish because interest rates will be lower. It could be bearish on other respects because inflation might increase. Kamala is not good for the market, so that could. But on the other hand, the market's done very well under Biden. So it's a very hard analysis to make, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I find it very difficult to make these kind of predictions. I do find the market very expensive right now. And does it make sense to me that the market has gone up 35%? No, when I look at the 10-year bond yield. Now, if the 10-year bond yield now was at 3%, I'd say, yeah, that makes sense. 35% probably makes sense. But it's at 4%, 4 point something. It doesn't make sense for me that the S&P went up 35% this year. I think it went up 35. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 20-something%. Whatever it went up. Seems to have gone up a lot at a time of a lot of still economic uncertainty and interest rates not being as low, 10-year particularly not being as low as one would like or expect. So that's how I look at things. So I think it's expensive. I wouldn't be buying into it. I don't know if I'd be selling. Michael, does our current generation of young people resent work the way Europeans do? Advocating for personal responsibility is seen as an antiquated relic of the past. Today, it's all about leisure, resentment, and mooching. I mean, certainly more than ever of our younger generation feels that way. And I've told this story of the audience member at a talk I gave, a debate I was at the University of Texas years ago, who basically came up to the microphone and said, why should I work after I graduate? I've got a lot of hobbies I'd like to pursue. Why shouldn't I get money from the government to pursue those hobbies? So that idea is more prevalent today than ever before. It's a horrific, evil idea. It's a rejection of personal responsibility. And it's more common now than ever. how long it'll last. How long people can hold this, I don't know, but it definitely is a real issue. David, one of the things I learned from listening to you on is how to face criticism without getting riled up and remain unwavered. Just this skill is worth my super chat money. I appreciate that, David. Thank you. That is a real compliment, and I appreciate that. JP Pullman, Dr. Brook, I know this is a bit off topic, but is internal audit a function that would exist in a properly free market? If not, how urgently would one move, particularly if supporting a family? Internal audit. I'm not sure what that means. How often urgently would one move, particularly if supporting a family, pursuing FO, but very difficult, pursuing FO. What is FO? I don't know. Are you there, Pullman? Can you explain this a little bit? Internal audit in a company, I think absolutely would be happening in a free market. The accounting, if you're talking about accounting, the accounting might not be the standard accounting practices that we have today, which are basically dictated as one by, in a sense, by the regulatory bodies. But I absolutely think there would be auditing going on. It would be auditing for shareholders, for the owner. The owners would demand that the company be audited. They want to know what happened. You want to know there's no fraud. Want to know what the company's actually up to, what's actually happening, how much is their stock really valued based on that. So I absolutely think auditing would be a key feature of a free market. It would be very different, though. It would not be, there would be competing standards, and the standards might actually be different for different industries. And there wouldn't be just one standard that the SEC approves of. And there might be different auditing for private companies and public companies. But yeah, I think owners will always want accounting audits, if that is what we're talking about. Soupy Cask, what was the actual economic justification for shifting for fiat currency? Surely it was just increased government power. Why did Milton support? It was shifting to government power. Milton Friedman had a problem with the gold standard. I can't remember the exact document he made. But the actual shift at the time was, there's a sense in which it was inevitable, because the United States was on a pseudo gold standard in the 1960s and was cheating on it. So it was printing more dollars than there was gold, and they were cheating on it, and the markets were calling them on it, and gold was massively exiting the United States. And as a consequence of gold leaving the United States, it created a real problem, economic problem, and there were only two solutions. One was to basically rein in government spending, rein in the amount of money in the economy to match the amount of dollars, and to go the private banking route ultimately. And there was no support for that, even from Milton Friedman, who's a big supporter of the Federal Reserve, or to go fiat. The existing system was untenable because it led to cheating. It led the Fed to print more dollars than they had gold, because there were lots of government expenditures that needed to be funded. So it came to a fork in the road, and you could go private banking gold standard, or you could go fiat currency. And Milton Friedman didn't believe in gold standard private banking. He believed it was an unstable system, and therefore he endorsed fiat. He also believed that he had his theory, the monetary theory would control the amount of money being printed by the Federal Reserve, and would minimize inflation. And he thought the Federal Reserve would adopt his theory, and it did under Volcker. But it can't. The theory is not complete. It's incomplete to start with, And secondly, it's going to be cheated on constantly. The government will never uphold it. It will always be cheated on. All right, guys. Thank you. We had a lot of people watching live. Almost 1,000 total on Twitter. And I don't know how many overall on YouTube, but at some point around 200 live at once. So thank you guys. Really, really appreciate it. Super chatters, you guys were great today. Lots of good questions, lots of support. I really, 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 really appreciate the support. I don't think I thanked all the people who did stickers. Friend Harper did a sticker. And let me go back. I saw Wes did a sticker for $50, and Fred Harper did another sticker. And let's see who else. But thank you for all the people. Oh, we got stickers from Fizzled and Steven. And so I really appreciate the support. It's not an easy topic to talk about, particularly this election, particularly with the disagreement, let's say, among certain objectivists around this issue. It's not easy to talk about. I appreciate your patience with me and your willingness to sit through it. Thank you, Paul, over it. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Silvanos. Really appreciate you guys, and really appreciate the ongoing steady support that you provide the show on a regular basis. Thank you, Wes. There's Wes, $50. I remember seeing that. And thank you, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I haven't seen Jeffrey in a long time. You got to give us an update on the restaurant, Jeffrey. I might be coming to New York in January, and I'll definitely want to stop by. So we should catch up. Thank you, Mark, Ryan. All right, I think we got everybody. So thank you. Don't forget to like the show before you leave. Give that thumbs up. Hopefully you got a value out of the show. Express that value by just putting a thumbs up. It doesn't cost anything. And I really appreciate the support. I appreciate it all. DWN Logic says, it was Dr. Peikoff who not only told me that I should, but also taught me how to think for myself. I agree with that. I believe he would be most disappointed if he thought his students were switching their votes just because he endorsed Trump. He also gave an argument for endorsing Trump, not just by endorsing him. But yes, you have to think for yourself. You have to take his arguments and other arguments and your own views and then embrace them. But I appreciate that sentiment, DWN Logic. And I will see you all tomorrow. We'll be back on a regular schedule. There'll also be a show Saturday. Saturday's show is going to be on inflation. Thank you for David Sussin for sponsoring that show. And there'll be a show in Hebrew on Sunday, and then a show on Monday. And then from after Monday, we got the interview with Mike Mazza on private space exploration. And after Monday, I don't know, because I'll be traveling and I just don't know when I'll have the time to do shows. But hopefully I'll catch some of you live and get to say hello to some of you in Nashville and in Denver. See you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.